In this important lesson, we're going to talk about changing between decimals, fractions, and percents. And the new one in that mix is percents. Now, the word percent actually means per 100. And you know that per means over. So percent means over 100. If I said 20%, I mean 20 over 100. It is a way to compare to 100. So what we're going to, and by the way, the symbol for percent, I'm sure you're familiar with, looks kind of like that. We're going to compare between percents, decimals, and fractions. So let's take a look. There's a little pink box that describes each one of these processes. Writing a percent as a decimal. If you have 43%, although they show a particular process, all you have to remember is that percent means per 100, so it is 43 hundredths. 43 hundredths would be written as 0.43, and the easy way to get that is to pick up the decimal point in the percent, which would be right here if it were written, and move it 10 hundredths, move it 2 places to the left, and that gives you 0.43. So here's the reminder. Remove the percent symbol and move the decimal point 2 places to the left. All right, next, to write a percent as a fraction. Well, all you have to do is remember that percent means over 100. So if you had 43%, it is 43 over 100. That's always the super easy part. Then you may need to simplify that fraction. In other words, reduce it to lowest terms. All right, so replace the percent symbol with its fractional equivalence, which is 1 over 100, and multiply. In other words, put this percent number over 100. Percent per 100. Next, writing a decimal as a percent. Well, you're going to go back the other way, so that if you had the decimal 27 hundredths and you want to write it as a percent, well, 27 hundredths is 27 hundredths is written as percent. The way to remember is to go 2 places to the right. And there is not a decimal written there, but that's where it would be. So move the decimal 2 places to the right. So this is kind of a silly way to remember, but nevertheless, if you are going from percent to decimal, the word decimal has an L in it, so you move the decimal point to the left. If instead you're going from a decimal to a percent, the word percent has an R in it. You can move the decimal 2 places to the right. That's kind of silly, non-mathematical way to remember it, but it will work. Finally, it says to write a fraction as a percent. Now there's more than one way to do this, but I will show you the way that most students like to do it. If you have 1/8, excuse me, most people think of that and say, oh, 1/8, I'll take 1 and divide it by 8, and that will give you 0.125. Now, that's a decimal. If your goal is then to turn it on into a percent, you're going to go 2 to the right, and it will be 12.5%. So most people, when they're changing a fraction to a percent, they manage to go through the decimal. Now, this little chart down here might be somewhat helpful. Fraction, decimal, percent. Abbreviate F, D, and P. If you're going decimal to percent, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Percent to decimal, move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Reminder, this is from a previous lesson. Fraction to decimal, just divide. The numerator divided by the denominator. decimal to fraction, put the number over the power of 10 indicated by the place value. So if it's 0.5, it's 5/10. If it's 0.17, then it is 17 hundredths. Percent to a fraction, put the number over 100 and reduce. Fraction to percent, 2 steps. Change the fraction to a decimal and the decimal to a percent. This might be worthwhile writing down on a note card. All right, let's use this information. All right, each one of these tables is going to have several steps to do. All right, in the first one, I have a fraction, 3/8. What would it be as a decimal? All right, 3/8 is 3 divided by 8. And we get 0.375. To change that to a percent, you'll move the decimal 2 places to the right for 37.5%. All right, now, next one, let's start with the decimal. To change it to a percent, we go 1, 2 to the right, adding a 0, and it is 40%. To change it to a fraction, we have to be able to read it. It is 4 in the tenths place. And then reduce that. 2 goes into the top 2 times, 2 goes into the bottom 5 times. It is 2/5. The last one, the percent to a decimal. I'm going to pick up the implied decimal point, go 2 to the left, so it is 0.85. And then to write it as a fraction, if I go back to this percent, 85% means 85 over 100. Let's see, those are both divisible by 5. And 5 goes into 85 17 times. Woo. And 5 goes into 120 times. So this is 17/20. Okay? That was over 10. I don't know how it got erased. So we're changing back and forth. Each one of these charts has a fraction, a decimal, and a percent, and you have to change to the other 2 forms. All right, let's do another one. The only thing I don't show any work on is when I simply move the decimal point. All right, fraction 1/8. What would that be as a decimal? Well, it's 1 divided by 8, which is 0.125. To change that to a percent, I move it 1, 2 places. That gives me 12.5%. All right, the next one, I have a decimal. I'm going to change it to a fraction. That is 8 in the tenths place. That reduces to 4/5. To change it to a percent, I move the decimal point 1, 2 places, adding a 0. I get 80%. Next one, I have a percent going to a decimal. I'm going to pick up the implied decimal point, which is to the right of the 5, go 2 to the left, so it is 0.35. To change the percent to a fraction, it is 35 over 100. 5 goes into the top 7 times, 5 goes into the bottom 20 times. That is 7/20. All right, let's look at number 3. All right, these are in a different order, so I need to be aware of that. I have a percent. I need to go to a decimal. I'm going to pick up the implied decimal point, go 2 to the left, and this might seem a little odd, but it is 4. Yes, it could be 400. We would not probably write that. It is just 4. And something that might be nice to remember is that 1 is 100%, 2 is 200%, 3 is 300%, etc. All right, as a fraction or a mixed number, now I might like to see a little more feedback, but I think it would just be 4. It's a whole value, so I think that's what it wants. All right. Suppose the decimal is 2.8. As a percent, I go 2 to the right. That's going to give me 280%. All right. As a fraction or a mixed number, now there are several ways you could do it. This is 2.8 is 2 and 8/10. So now reduce the fraction part. That is 2 and 4 goes, 2 goes in there 4 times and 2 goes in there 5 times. So it is a mixed number, 2 and 4/5. The last one, I have this fraction. If I want to change it to a decimal, well, it's going to be 2 point because this 2 simply carries over here. Now, if I take 43/50ths and I take 43 divided by 50, I'm going to get 0.86. 0.86. Now, if you wanted to, you don't need to, but if you wanted to, you could say 5 times 2 is 100, plus 43 is 143 over 50. Then do the division of 143 divided by 50, and you will get the 2.86. But it's really a little easier just to carry the 2 over. Okay, and finally we need to change that decimal to a percent. We're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and we will have 286%. All right, let's look at the last one. I have 700%. As I move the decimal 2 places to the left, I'm going to get the decimal 7, which will also be the fraction or the mixed number. All right, the decimal 2.2. What would it be as a percent? Well, I need to move 2 to the right, adding a 0. It will be 220%. As a fraction or a mixed number, if I have 2.2, well, I'm just going to carry the whole number 2 over, and then the decimal 2 is 2/10. Reducing that fraction, that is 2 and 1/5. 2 and 1/5. Okay, last one. I have 3 and 37/50ths. As a decimal, I'm going to take the 3 and the 37/50ths, and I'm going to carry the 3 over, and I'm going to take 37 divided by 50, and that's going to give me 0.74. So that is 3.74. Or if you wanted to, you can multiply 50 times 3 for 150, add the 37 for 187, and then do the division. You'll get the same thing. You'll get 3.74. Then, as a percent, move it 2 places to the right. It's 374%. Okay, so changing back and forth between all of those forms. Don't forget that this little chart at the bottom, well, on this page, could be very, very helpful.